I feel like I hope that this is an area of continued research and a lot more publications to talk about this. So I can just speak to, I think, a couple of challenges that are more hypothesis than something, we discovered in our data. One would just be the actual representation of different minorities. So there was a really interesting study, and it was looking at the probability of finding an unrelated donor match based on different racial and ethnic minorities. And for white of European descent, this is in the U.S., the likelihood of finding a matched donor was like upwards of 75%, up to 80%. And you compare that to finding a matched donor for someone who was Hispanic in the US, which was 44%, and someone who was Black of South American descent, and that decreased to 16%. So we still have a huge problem of what our donor registries, what populations those are representing. I recently saw some data that I think we are improving, and those numbers are actually getting better, but we have a long way to go. And this is looking at, the US, where we have actually the most robust donor system in general. And then you expand that or extrapolate that to other parts of the world where, that saying Black of Central or South American descent covers many different ethnic populations. And we really have not created robust systems in a lot of different parts of the world to capture these varying racial and ethnic minorities. And then I'd say that another challenge is actually just the feasibility of all this, the cost of doing a donor search. And once identifying a donor, actually, the logistical financial challenges of following up with those donors and then getting those, getting that stem cells to the country that it's needed. These are actually huge barriers that are much more logistical, but present really, I think, in many cases, barriers that can't be overcome or that are at this point potentially financially untenable. This sort of research and this data is only as powerful as the input that comes into it. And so, we really need to continue to focus on bolstering our collection systems for understanding basic things like incidence data and really understanding what the trends of that are globally, especially in places where reporting of diseases and where incidence reporting and mortality reporting is quite a burden in healthcare systems. So I think as an international community, we need to continue to focus on collecting this data from all parts of the world, not just sort of our most developed, resource abundant regions. And I think this really focuses on the work of organizations like the ones I worked with the Global Burden of Disease Project out of the Institute of Health Metrics and Economics at the University of Washington, and the Worldwide Network for Blood and Marrow Transplantation, who are actually collecting this data on what how transplant is happening in all parts of the world. And, these are just actually very challenging data sets to collect and maintain and move forward. And I think we need all three of those. So it's just sort of a plea to our community to continue to focus on gaining this robust data from all regions of the world, because I think that is important.